Hey, well, this is Michael Gelbart, and I'm with Shift in Perspective, and I'm here today with Michael DiPietro, who's a friend and a co-dancer and a really creative and intelligent person. And I thought how interesting to interview Michael on his work. And Michael's the co-author of The Inside Guide, yes.
Hmm.
He co-wrote this with Marcy Donnelly, and they were in a dialogue process together, which really synergizes now into a project that they're bringing forward. Michael's a transformative coach, and he helps people shift through limiting patterns. And he's been trained as an NLP master and neuro-linguistic programming, and also has been a martial arts teacher. So, welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here and excited to see what we're going to come up with today and what we can generate for your audience today.
Yeah, the Michael P and Michael G dialogue here today. So we will be focusing today on how wounds drive our awakening. And those wounds can be personal ones in our histories, developmental wounds. They can be relational wounds. They can be really also collective trauma that we're all living in this hot soup of all kinds of vicarious trauma. And also, our wounds can be generational, those that we inherited, those that we feel somatically and have had the weight of, or the blessings of when those wounds have been turned into blessings. And so that'll be our theme today. I'm excited to have our conversation.
Yes, me too.
Anything you want to add in terms of our theme here today?
I think I think what's going to be really impactful is how those wounds, they're really portals, really. They really open up to our purpose and our mission. And really, when we can honor that in a new way, it's very transformative for people.
Mm,
I think that's where I want to get to today and
yeah.
really give your audience a sense of what that can do for them.
Yeah, wounds as portals. I love that.
Mhm.
I wear this amulet is a portal. I see this as we're all multidimensional beings, and our nature is movement, and so we'll share what moves through us. And so to begin, I'd like to just invite ourselves and our audience to just relax and settle in. And first, we can begin just with our body sensations and noticing, yeah, what's happening in our physical bodies, our energy, our kidneys, feet, our eyes, and noticing our impulses we may have right now, urges, how our organs are talking to us right now, and listening, first of all, internally, and yeah, and noticing what's in our hearts as well, what we're bringing in today, what we're feeling in our hearts, emotions, maybe from our day or what's happening in our lives, being here, and our thought process. So we're just noticing what's sort of flitting about, moving about in our minds, just noticing. Yeah. So I know that I'm really excited about being here, and I feel that energy. And Michael and I just shared, we're both feeling a lot of flow energy and life energy here today. And I hope to be inspiring and informative for one another and for those that are listening with us. And please, anyone who's watching this, make comments. We'd love to hear what you think, and we'll send you some links to what we're doing in our work. So maybe we'll begin with you sharing how you found your spiritual calling in your journey.
Hmm. So I would say up to I'm going to be 60 this year, and up to age 30, I was sleepwalking through life. I was really asleep, but I hit a very low point in my life at age 30, and I went to the desert in Arizona, the Sedona, And I had an awakening. I had an experience, and it was very profound. And it's kind of like it cracked me open.
Mm.
And the 30 years of unprocessed content started pouring out of me, and I went a little bonkers for a while. But that really initiated me onto my path at that point. And I was started to get into meditation and the martial arts and these practices that were taking me along in my journey. And eventually that became, how do I give back? How do I now begin to live out my own purpose, which is to be of service and to follow that call?
Mm.
So
Beautiful.
that's been an ongoing evolution. I don't feel like that ever really stops, you know. So
Yeah,
with
beautiful. And for you, that's 30 years ago, half your life ago. And
yeah,
for
yeah.
you, it's been 30 years. I look at this as been at least 300 years of wounds that I've been transmuting, in charge of transmuting
Yeah.
as
Well,
carried experience.
tell me about yourself, because you're more identify as a therapist, and tell me like what really drove you or what inspired you to get into that profession.
I call myself jokingly a cycle therapist because we cycle through time and what cycles through us. And I feel like I was born for this. I'm very fortunate. I've been a therapist for 40 years. I'm still practicing. One of these days, I'll actually get it. Um, it's a lot of fun. I really love my work. I love um, many of my clients very much. And I was born into, I'm a descendant of Holocaust survivors. So I was born into severe, extreme childhood trauma that my parents had gone through. From my mother was 3 years old, hiding in Warsaw with her mom, fleeing, pretending she wasn't Jewish, and surviving with her mom, who had a nervous breakdown after the war and has massive survival guilt. And I remember my grandma Stella sitting on her lap when I was like 5 years old and just absorbing her. And she was somewhat hollow. She had gone through electroshock therapy around that time in her life.
Oh,
And she was misdiagnosed, and they didn't know trauma treatment in the 50s. And she would pet my cheek and call me monkey and feed me a banana. And we would watch Sunday nights. My parents would drop us off, my brother and I, Jerry, my brother, and with my grandfather Joe, her husband, my step grandfather, and we'd watch the Ed Sullivan show in the Wonderful World of Disney. And I also really know that I absorbed my mother through her and my eyes. You think we're sitting on a lap of our mothers and whatever experiences they've had epigenetically and whatever unprocessed trauma. I'm a person of osmosis, that my sensitivity takes people in and feels very deeply. And so I know that I've carried that lineage, my maternal lineage, very, very profoundly. And there's been a lot of healing, unprocessed trauma that my mother lost most of her family. Like very
mm,
few of her family survived. And my dad was on death march and in Buchenwald concentration camp. We celebrate his liberation on April 11th from that experience. And both of my grandfathers, my grandparents on my father's side were murdered. And so all that trauma just has created the wounding that has led me to this path of healing, finding the gems, right? Turning the portal of those wounds, becoming a lot of lifiness, actually. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how your young wounds, 30, in those first 30 years, how that's driven you.
So my I'm also take people in. I'm also very sensitive, and I was a very sensitive child in a very chaotic, large Italian family. So I kind of
Mhm.
lost child syndrome, right? And I just blended into the background. But
Mhm. Mhm.
inside, I was taking and holding as much of the family pain as I could. And I was kind of a psychic sponge. And so
Mhm.
at a young age, I had a lot of depression, and I felt very heavy and dense. I grew up with a special needs sibling who was severely brain damaged from birth,
Mhm.
and that sucked a lot of the oxygen up in the room. So there wasn't a lot of attention left for little me. And I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of disappeared somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
As those early wounds got brought into adulthood, I moved forward with the belief that I had some issues and problems. And I think those were really just repressed as much as they could be until I had that opening and I started to face all that stuff and really start to heal it. And so a lot of what I began to learn is that I never really had a problem. What I had was parents who weren't able to recognize who I really was by no fault of their own. So I don't fault them for that, but it was a capacity they didn't have. They didn't have the capacity to understand this sensitive little child, and they did the best they could with what they had. But the real healing started to happen when I realized a lot of my problems were never really problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
lot of what I thought I had was a problem was family problems and things that I was trying
Yeah.
to work out
Context. Yeah.
on a personal level
Background.
that were
Uh-huh.
never really
Yeah.
mine.
Family constellations that are just what they are, and cycles of that we're barely aware of, and that our other humans are barely aware of. So much of us is background, somatic, contextual, and I can definitely we can definitely connect around the lost
Yeah.
child and the psychic sponge aspects. And also what I hear is the need for recognition. That's such a strong driver for understanding. And I just did a video this morning on giving what you want first. So if you want someone to be interested in you, be interested in them. You want
Amen.
transparency, be transparent. You want understanding, give understanding. And that's actually a way that I turn my wounds into gifts.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that because you talked a lot about how the impact of your family and what they had to go through wounded you, and how maybe those wounds were an impetus to get into your career. How did they really work, and how did those wounds transform into gifts for you? What was that experience like?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think similar to you or akin to you is the spiral. The Greeks call it a katabasis, the plunge to the depths. I had a lot of depression as a teenager too. Like I realized, oh, no one's actually seeing me. They're seeing these images of me, like in The Prodigal Son. Rilke does a great version of that. Oh, no one's actually seeing me.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of darkness, and there's a lot of invisibility and confusion and depression, all the stuff that teenagers go through. I heard that teenagers, there's more brain growth and development. We age more during our teenage years than any other time in our life. So we're just going through such fundamentally challenging, so much fundamental stuff. And so, yeah, teenage years were definitely raucous and wild. And I had a lot of rage inherited from, I still can find that rage in me, inherited from thousands of years of my ancestors being, extremely persecuted, culminating in the Holocaust. And so that rage wasn't always channeled. And so a lot of mistakes, a lot of call them, a lot of turbulence and turmoil. And so it's taken a long time for that, for me to like get up on my surfboard and be able to, be
Mhm.
maestro of my own navigational abilities. I'm still learning. When we learn,
So
continue.
was there a distinct turning point, or was that kind of a gradual process for you?
Hmm. That's such a great question. I had a huge transformation going to Israel when I was 20 years old and had some really profound spiritual shifts in my life there and a lot of identity shifts. Um, I think it's really been starts and stops, like along the way is learning, faltering, picking myself back up,
Mhm.
and learning to be relational. I would say that the primary practice right now in my life is that somatic consciousness, awakeness, and learning how to listen to others and pay attention to others' bodies and how my words are landing in others, which is a continual practice from my own lack of attunement that I received, learning how to be really attuning to others and being relational. That's where we collectively heal. And dance has been a huge therapeutic remedy for me, contact improv, really any kind of attunement practices. And so I'd say it's been gradual. There have been moments of awakening, but I'm still on this sort of learning curve. I tend to be more steady now in my life than certainly in my adolescence. How about you as far as awakenings? You had a huge awakening experience you were sharing.
I had that, and then I think the
The desert.
progress has been gradual though, and we learn, one of the things I think is important for people to understand that it's really it's a choice to do the inner work, but it does require facing our interior life.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't skip over that process.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us are by nature wired to do that more naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's part of the journey that you're gonna have
Yeah.
to take that inward glance. That
Right.
that process really took hold for me in my 30s when I really developed a
Mm-hmm.
steady meditation practice.
Mm-hmm.
Really
Mm-hmm.
learned the value of introspection and starting to notice these patterns, and then it was just a progression and continuing and just I noticed, you can probably agree that as you get older that gets easier. You
Mm-hmm.
have more
Yeah.
capacity, things lighten up a lot. It just you have a better context for
Mm-hmm.
this human development, and
Yeah. More comprehensive, more broadband, less short-term memory, more integration between the
yeah,
hemispheres,
yeah,
what
yeah.
they call wisdom. Hopefully. I really agree with you a lot about this. There's a courage involved in really facing our demons, facing our difficult, what is it, divine afflictions, as Blake called emotions, and not avoiding those or escaping from those, but really learning how to metabolize those emotions. And that's a huge tool that I work with around really being able to be present with our emotions and with my clients very much, and my friends and my family, whomever is open to my guidance, which family isn't always. To be able
Families rarely they're going to project their filter, right?
There's all kinds of projections, anything other than projections in families. That recognition and turning around to really notice who someone is such an important medicine. They're going to be more likely to recognize us if we're really understanding and interested in listening to who they are.
What
Also,
do you think, like in your observation, what has that been like for your clients when they get that, when you're bringing that and they're getting that breakthrough?
nectar.
Yeah.
It's like nectar. I mean, I was sitting with someone this morning, and at a certain point, like I just acknowledged something in him that really pierced through the veils underneath the projections and saw his truth, his true self. And it was like, he was like, thank you. Yeah. I had a client once, I enjoyed so much working with her, and she was in here in the office, and we were doing parts work. I'm IFS informed. I feel like I've been doing family systems work. Well, I have since, 83 when I graduated and studied Murray Bowen and systems therapy and such. And we're all like therapists, we're all bricoleurs. We're drawing from this, we're drawing from that. We're learning from each other. And so she, at a certain point, stood up in the center of the room and she was like, oh, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful moment. I feel deeply with whom I'm transparent with. I feel deeply with so many. And when others feel deeply and we're transparent with each other, there's so much insight and revelation that can come.
Yeah. It leads me to think of one of the experiences we can get on our path, which is a self-acceptance, where we have this love, we can build in a love and appreciation for us in our unfinished form, and the utter perfection of our imperfection. And that,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I wish everyone could get that message is you're okay the way you are.
I'm
Nothing's
rocking.
broken.
Yeah.
Nothing needs,
Well, yeah, that's really, I hear that's one of your core teachings, and that we're inherently intelligent and wonderful and love, and we're miracles. I mean, we're fucking,
yeah.
excuse my language, we're freaking miracles, people. You take any message from this, like waiting for a miracle, really? There's eyes, there's ears, there's heart in us, and saints don't complain. I'm not saying I'm a saint and never complain. But it's true, you know, inherently in forgiveness teachings, I've done some forgiveness work with Eileen Barker, Path of Forgiveness. And it's one teaching there, there's nothing to forgive,
Yeah.
and getting to a place of grace.
I mean, our nature is love, right? That doesn't mean I'm always walking around in a loving state, but it makes it easier for me to accept my humanity. Like I'm flawed. I still have things I'm working on, but it becomes easier to shift our identity into our loving self, into our loving core, and to operate from that place.
Yeah.
That as that process happens, it changes how we communicate, how we relate,
Yeah.
how we hold
Yeah.
the people in our life, right?
Very much. It shifts our energy, you know, when we have that space. It's like the great thing. One of the great things about IFS and Richard Schwartz. I mean, I'll have it, listen to him on YouTube, please do. He's beautiful the way his spiritual embodiment, and there's this notion, yeah, that we're creating space for more and more. I think of it like we're taking the clouds out of the sky, so sky of mind, to have more openness. So what I'm hearing you reference as acceptance, I think of openness and space,
Okay.
right? More room,
Yeah.
and also that willingness, going back to that, to go into those divine afflictions. I mean, if we're not feeling suffering, if we're not feeling trauma, if we're not feeling grief, we're not feeling. And dissociation is very helpful when it comes to like picking up the news and, you know, being on Instagram or what have you. And so we numb, or we avoid, or we go into, you know, fight mode or whatever that is in our nervous system strategies. I really pay a lot of attention to what our nervous system strategies are and acknowledging those.
Why do you think people do that distraction process, in your opinion? What's like,
Survival.
because isn't it, I mean, as we're on this path for longer, it gets easier. Like I can't not face that stuff, right? It's like it's up in my consciousness and I'm in it.
Well, it's survival. I mean, if people are, when we get overwhelmed and hyperactivated, our nervous system's gonna, you know, fight, it's gonna avoid, it's gonna freeze, it's gonna shut down, dissociate for survival.
Mhm.
It's like we can't be attentive to everything. We have to be selective, and having healthy boundaries there is really important to staying emotionally regulated in our window of
Yeah.
tolerance.
Maybe speak to, I'm curious more about that emotional regulation process.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a huge part of how I work. So I'm looking at like 0 to 10, and 3 to 7 is the window of tolerance, and 2 is depressive, shut down, like shame or guilt or the brake system, the polyvagal theory. So the dorsal vagal system just shuts down when we're hyperactivated and it's too much. It's like the elevator up here, it's too much, and then the nervous system go, oh, gonna shut her down here. And then 7 is high active functioning. 3, 4 is chill and mellow. Some people operate more from that green zone of chill and mellow, some from the blue zone, color coding wise, of that high drive. I'm a blue zone kind of guy.
I'm a
You know, I
blues.
relax eventually during the day. I can become restful, and taking naps as I need. But when we go to an 8, I call it whelm. It's like that boundary. And once we get overwhelmed, then our nervous system is going to go into defensive strategies, coping strategies. So we're coping. So it's all like survival, protection, and regulation is the keys. When we're regulated and we're co-regulated, the piece about relational co-regulation, like with you and Marcy, and I'd love to hear a little bit as I finish this sentence about how you and Marcy work. You two are co-regulators and co-authors and co-creators. And what a wonderful collaboration I imagine you have. That's the power of relational regulation.
Yeah.
So share about that if you like, you and Marcy, and how that collaboration is.
That's been amazing. I knew I needed help because I have a hard time writing just on a blank computer. So I needed someone to dialogue with. And Marcy came up repeatedly 3 times in my meditation. And I didn't listen at first because she was originally a client. And I said, no, she's a client. But she kept coming up in my meditation, and I reached out to her and said, hey, do you want to write this book with me? And she was a huge yes. And I think starting from that process, there was something divinely perfect about how we came together. And she really, the joke is I'm the right brain and she's the left brain. And we really work together in a very, you used the word earlier in our conversation before we got online here about synergy. And we really have that where we just bounce back and forth and have a natural appreciation. We're very different, but we bounce and we move back and forth very well, and we're both bringing something different to the table.
So valuable, respecting our differences, our complementarities. Imagine you've had conflicts and wounds here and there between the two of you.
Not so much.
Really?
We feel like we have a past life kind of karma thing going on or something. Like we joke and we have a lot of fun working. The times we've gotten a little bit in conflict is where we both get stressed. And when we move to like creating this stuff as work and it's heavy, and then we're just like, we're not having fun anymore, then something's not right.
Marketing. Oh my goodness.
So we've learned if something feels heavy or drudgery, we do a reset meditation and we reset ourselves before we jump in. And that's served us very well. So for a long time, our mantra was ease and flow. And we need
there's partnership, and spirituality, I think, is often, it's such a widely used word. And there's a relational spirituality that I hear. There's that synergy and that joy and that co-creativity. That's such a powerful dimensionality of spirituality. I want to mention one thing. I'm afraid that the timer may go off in 3 minutes as far as our videos, so I think we may start to wrap a little bit, if that's okay.
Sure.
So
yeah.
We have a good closure. And I just want to mention Thomas Hubel, whom I studied with in his community, worldwide community, and in specific formats and cohorts. Brilliant teacher, and I highly recommend that listeners study him on collective and ancestral healing and transparent communication. And been learning a lot about the power of both that inner, the body, the heart, the mind, and the relational collective, and the transparency that can bring revelations to us. Yeah. So I'm glad for you and Marcy. I'd love to meet her sometime.
Thank you. Yeah, she would like the same.
Well,
what a treat. I feel like I could go on for hours and hours and hours with you.
We could. Well, maybe we'll do a follow-up. I'd like that. We're just getting to know each other so much better too, and gleaning insights from one another. Let's see maybe how we can wrap this. If there's anything you'd like to share to bring, what you would like to share to others, just please share what you'd like.
I think just remember love as much as you can and embrace who you are. You're born unique in the world. There's only one of each of us on the planet, and the gold you're looking for, whatever you're looking for in your life, lies within you. And that's why I called my book The Inside Guide, because that guidance or that wisdom or that love lies at the center of your being. It's really who you are. And so as much as possible, I like to just remind people, it doesn't mean we have to be perfect. It doesn't mean we're not a work in progress.
I've been practicing imperfection as much doing really well.
Yeah, I think just begin as much as you can to operate and to get in touch and do the inner work to clear the things that are getting in the way of that.
Yeah. Beautiful. And that inner work, I would add
How
to it.
about you?
Yeah, I would say the inner work in combination with the relational, and that the inner guidance is there, and so is that relational guidance and how we collectively navigate. Then we're more resourced, right? More hands, more more attunement, more healing, and more wisdom capacity. So thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you
Michael
too. Great.
DiPietro, really pleasure to be with you. And oh, it looks like the camera's still going. Okay, I was a little concerned it was going to turn off. So we'll say thank you to listeners, those that have hung in there with us the whole time here. Just want to express my gratitude. I know your attention is valuable. And please do comment and feedback. We'll post our individual information as well. So until next, I'm going to turn the recording off and wish everyone well, and I'll stay with you on the screen. We'll finish up here. Let's see. How do I
Thanks.
turn that camera off? Beautiful. We'll see you. Be well, everyone.